The story they're telling you about the economy is a lie. They tell you inflation is transitory. They tell you the market is resilient. They tell you that the brilliant minds on Wall Street and at the Federal Reserve have built a system that is safer, stronger, and more secure than ever before. But while they feed you these soothing narratives, a small group of people, the global elite, the architects of our financial system, are moving their money. They are quietly, almost invisibly, taking positions. Not in the stocks you're told to buy. Not in the 401ks you're told to trust. They're buying something else, something hidden. A weapon. The same weapon they used to bring the world to its knees in 2008. What if the next crash isn't an accident? What if it's a controlled demolition? What if the feeling you have right now, that pinch every time you buy groceries, the anxiety that your savings are melting away, the fear that your job could vanish overnight, what if that isn't just a side effect of the economy? What if it's the intended consequence of a plan that was set in motion years ago? This isn't about fear-mongering, this is about pattern recognition. We're going to connect the dots, follow the money, and expose the single greatest lie ever told in modern finance. Before we pull back the curtain, I need to know where this warning is reaching. Drop your city or country in the comments below. Let's see how far the signal goes. And if you believe that the truth shouldn't have a paywall, hit that subscribe button. We don't have corporate sponsors, we have you. Welcome to the front line. Now, to understand what they're buying today, you have to understand the heist they pulled yesterday. Let's go back to the years leading up to 2008. The official story, the one you saw on the nightly news, was simple. It was a story about greed, yes, but a simple, almost cartoonish greed. The narrative goes like this. Predatory lenders gave out bad home loans or subprime mortgages to people who couldn't afford them. Wall Street banks bundled thousands of these toxic loans together into something called a mortgage-backed security, or MBS. Think of it like a financial fruitcake, where a few good cherries are mixed in with a whole lot of rotten, moldy fruit. Then the supposedly independent ratings agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, stamped these toxic fruitcakes with a big, shiny AAA, the highest seal of approval, safe as a government bond. Pension funds, small-town municipalities, and global investors, all hungry for a decent return, bought these securities by the billions, believing they were buying prime real estate investments. Then the inevitable happened. The homeowners with no income and no job couldn't pay. The mortgages defaulted. The fruitcake was revealed to be 99% rot, and the entire global financial system, which was built on this mountain of lies, froze solid. Lehman Brothers collapsed. The stock market cratered. Millions lost their homes, their jobs, their life savings. It was a tragedy born of reckless greed, a failure of oversight, a black swan event. That is the official story, and it's a masterpiece of misdirection. Because the real story, the one they don't tell you in economics class, is that the housing market was just the stage. The mortgages were just a prop. The real action, the real money, the real weapon was in a shadow system running in parallel. A system of side bets, a dark casino where Wall Street wasn't just betting on the game, they were rigging the outcome. Think about it. A system where millions of bad loans were bundled and stamped with the seal of approval from a trusted authority, then sold to an unsuspecting public while the insiders prepared for the inevitable collapse. Sound familiar? Look at our world today. We have a corporate debt bubble, with hundreds of zombie companies only able to survive by taking on more and more cheap debt. We have an auto loan bubble, a student loan bubble, all of it bundled up, packaged, and sold off. We have an everything bubble, inflated by over a decade of the Federal Reserve's zero interest rate policy, flooding the world with easy money. An entire global economy built on a foundation of unsustainable debt. Sound familiar? They told you after 2008 that they had put in new regulations, that the system was now safe. Dodd-Frank, they called it, a new rulebook to prevent the same crisis from ever happening again. But what if the rulebook was just for show? What if the real game never stopped? What if it just moved deeper into the shadows, became more complex, and 1,000 times more powerful? They told you it was a failure of the system. We're here to tell you it was a feature. They didn't break the machine, they operated it exactly as it was designed, and the design is flawless for its true purpose, the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you make $1 trillion? You don't earn it. You don't build something. You take it. And to take it, you need a tool. A lever big enough to move the world. That lever was forged in the late 1990s and early 2000s, in the halls of Congress and the back rooms of Wall Street. It was a piece of financial alchemy, so potent, so dangerous, it should have been locked away forever. Instead, they deregulated it. They unleashed it. It's a financial instrument that allowed a small group of insiders to not just predict the 2008 collapse, but to place gargantuan, world-breaking bets on it happening. They didn't just see the fire coming, they bought insurance policies on a house they knew was about to burn down. And in some cases, they held the matches. This instrument is the key to everything. It's what connects 2008 to today. It's the secret the elites are using right now, preparing for the next even bigger wealth transfer. They built a doomsday machine, pointed it at the global economy, and got ready to press the button. And when you find out who signed the legislation that allowed this weapon to go unregulated, letting it fester in the dark until it was ready to detonate, you won't believe the name. It's a name you've heard 100 times, a name you were told to trust. The receipt is wilder than you think.
In the last episode, we revealed that the official story of the 2008 crash was a lie. It wasn't just a housing crisis. It was a controlled demolition executed through a shadow financial system. We left you with a critical question. What was the weapon they used, and who unleashed it? If you thought the last part was wild, wait until you see this. The truth is more calculated, more cynical, and infinitely more profitable than you can imagine. Now we pull back the final curtain. The weapon has a name. It's called a credit default swap, or CDS. And on the surface, it sounds boring. It sounds harmless. The bankers designed it that way. Complexity is a form of camouflage. Let me break it down. Imagine your neighbor owns a house. You, for whatever reason, think his house is going to burn down. Maybe he's a reckless cook. Maybe the wiring is bad. So you go to an insurance company and you say, I want to buy a fire insurance policy on my neighbor's house. The insurance company says, that's odd. It's not your house. But okay. For a small monthly premium, if your neighbor's house burns down, we will pay you the full value of the house. Now, stop and think about the incentives here. You are now financially invested in your neighbor's house burning to the ground. This is what Wall Street calls a moral hazard. It's a polite term for a perverse incentive to root for disaster. Now, what if you could buy 1,000 insurance policies on that same house? This is exactly what the credit default swap allowed Wall Street to do. A CDS was in essence an insurance policy on a financial product, like a mortgage-backed security. But here's the twist. Here is the secret that broke the world. Thanks to a piece of legislation passed in the year 2000, the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, a bill championed by Wall Street insiders and signed into law. These credit default swaps were declared not to be insurance. They were classified as unregulated derivatives. This was the kill shot. Because they weren't legally insurance, it meant two catastrophic things. One, the sellers of the CDS, like the insurance giant AIG, didn't have to keep any money in reserve to pay claims. And two, and this is the most important part, it meant you did not have to own the asset to buy insurance on it. Suddenly, a shadow market was born. For every $1 of real mortgage debt, Wall Street created $10, then $50, then $100 in side bets on whether that debt would fail. Let's look at the numbers. By 2007, the total value of the subprime mortgage market was around $1.3 trillion. But the value of the credit default swap market betting on that debt, it had exploded to over $62 trillion. That's more than 4 times the size of the entire U.S. economy at the time. A small handful of insiders saw this. They realized they could make billions by buying these cheap CDS insurance policies on the mountains of toxic debt they knew was destined to fail. Meanwhile, institutions like AIG were selling these policies, collecting billions in premiums. In 2007 alone, AIG's financial products division wrote over $440 billion worth of CDS protection. They had no idea they were selling the matches for the biggest bonfire in the world. When the market finally turned, the chain reaction was apocalyptic. The mortgage securities plummeted. The CDS contracts triggered. The people who had bet on failure went to sellers like AIG and said, "Pay up." But AIG couldn't pay. The entire global banking system, interconnected through this web of derivatives, was insolvent. And so the architects of the system went to the government. The $700 billion TARP bailout wasn't to save homeowners, it was to save the banks. AIG alone received a bailout package of $182 billion, money that flowed through it directly to the banks like Goldman Sachs, who were on the winning side of the bets. It was the most audacious heist in history. Step 1. Create a bubble. Step 2. Create a weapon to bet on that bubble's collapse. Step 3. Quietly buy up that weapon. Step 4. When the bubble bursts, collect trillions from the collapse. Step 5. Get the government to use taxpayer money to cover your losses and pay out on your winning bets. The wealth was not destroyed, it was transferred, from the middle class to the financial elite. And now we arrive at the final warning. They never turned off the machine. The derivatives market is now larger and more opaque than it was in 2008. The same weapons are being aimed at new targets: corporate debt, commercial real estate, even entire countries. So what do the elites quietly buying right now? They're executing the same playbook. First, they are buying protection, credit default swaps on corporate bonds, betting that zombie companies will fail. Second, they're buying volatility, instruments tied to the VIX, the fear index, betting on pure chaos that will wipe out average investors. And third, and most importantly, they're using their capital to buy real, tangible assets: farmland, water rights, energy infrastructure, gold. They're moving their wealth out of the digital illusion and into the hard assets that will survive the coming reset. They'll use the derivatives market to trigger the collapse, and then, when panic fills the streets, they'll step in and buy up what's left of the real economy for pennies on the dollar. 2008 was a test run. The next one will be faster, global, and far more devastating. The denial we live in today is the same denial of 2007. We live on borrowed time, trusting institutions that have already proven they will sacrifice us to save themselves. The lesson is this: they did not fix the problem, they refinanced it. They didn't dismantle the weapon. They upgraded it. And right now, their fingers are on the trigger. The only way to protect yourself is to understand the game. So I ask you, now that you've seen the blueprint, now that you know the weapon, are we wiser now, or are we just walking the same path in better suits? If this message resonated with you, share it with one person who needs to see it. These are the conversations that happen in the shadows. It's time to bring them into the light. Subscribe to this channel, not just for more videos, but to be part of a community that refuses to accept the official story. Stay awake, stay skeptical, and prepare yourself. The final warning has been issued.